A month ago, the Niners didn't seem to think they were contenders. Now they seem to have changed their mind about that. How's it going? Good morning. Welcome to Walsh's Playbook. That's former Raiders offensive coordinator Tom Walsh. I'm Grant Cohn. Today we're going to be talking about John Lynch a little bit. He went on the radio recently and seemed to have changed his tune about his expectations for this season. We're talking about Tom's expectations for this season and what the Niners can expect against the Titans on offense and defense. Today's episode is brought to you by Rula Online Therapy. Therapy that doesn't break the bank. These are sessions that can cost as low as $15. You get full support from start to finish. Top tier providers only, and everything's in one place, whether it's therapy or medication management. Thousands of guys have already used Rula to finally get the care they needed. Don't keep putting it off. Go to rula.com/cone and get started today. That's rula.com/cone. Take the first step, get connected, and take control of your mental health. It's also brought to you today by 1-800-CONTACTS. You can get your exact contacts delivered to your door with their easy online ordering and fast free shipping. Plus, they have a best price guarantee. So if you find your contacts at a lower price, they'll match it. Getting contacts doesn't have to be a hassle. Let 1-800-CONTACTS get you the contact lenses you need right now. Order online at 1-800-CONTACTS.com or download the free 1-800-CONTACTS app today. All right, Tom, we've been talking about whether the Niners are contenders or not for weeks. Now John Lynch is talking about it, and he acknowledged that the NFL is wide open. I guess he just noticed. Do you think the Niners are better than they expected to be? I mean, they really set the bar pretty low earlier this season.
Well, Grant, first of all, when we first started discussing this months ago, we talked about how the Niners had probably the easiest schedule in the league this year based upon last year's record and all that and how it was laid out, which would obviously give a team hope for being able to make a playoff run, especially when you have as many talented players as the Niners have. And they were beset by some injuries. Lynch did come out and kind of lowball the whole thing and tried to, play the woe is me card. But, as a player and as a coach, I would hate to have my GM out there as the mouthpiece of the organization. And here I'm busting my butt, lifting weights, running, stretching, diet, nutrition, and all that. And then I got Lynch out there saying, we're going to be so-and-so. But then I had told you earlier this year, I thought that the Niners should go at least 12-5.
Maybe
13-4.
It's playing out that way.
And, one of the big reasons why, despite the injuries that have beset the Niners, is the parity, AKA / mediocrity, of the NFL has opened the door for them to go forward and have as good a shot at getting to Levi Stadium in February as anybody else in the league.
I think this is what's confusing the 49ers, because when they look at their team, they see a team that's not nearly as good as the one they had in 2023 or 2019 when they went to the Super Bowl and lost. So how could this team be the one that wins the Super Bowl? But I don't think it's necessarily about their team. It's more about the rest of the league. What team in the league is so dominant this year?
Well, Grant, I think this is the case where the competition is falling back to you as opposed to you trying to have to measure up against a quality level of competition, which obviously is lacking this year in the league. And so I think you're finally seeing the culmination of the front office on Park Avenue in New York preaching about the benefits of salary caps, the reverse order of drafting predicated upon the losers get the pick first, etc. All those things are playing together now to bring the league back to the middle of the pack. And of course, the league loves it because it keeps the fans in the game longer, more eyeballs on TV watching ball games because their team still has a shot. And this is playing perfectly for, the NFL, who wants to gin up more revenue. So it's laying out as they would wish it would be.
Right. So when Purdy was on that rookie deal and they had all those players, like 9 players in the top 100, they felt like they were a juggernaut. That's not the norm in the NFL. The norm in the NFL is you have a mediocre team and you're either mediocre plus or mediocre minus. And right now the Niners are in that same boat with everyone else. So why not them? I mean, they have an easy schedule. They get to face a rookie this week. They get to face a grandpa the week after. Seems like it's breaking their way.
Hey, you still have a chance to make a comeback if you want to get into the NFL. You're younger than Rivers. My goodness.
What do you think of the Colts and Rivers doing this?
Well, I tell you what now. The one thing about Phillip is the guy's a bright guy. He's had a relationship with the head coach for 8 years when they were with the Chargers. Right. He knows the offense. And, I remember George Blanda for the Raiders for years. At 48 years old, trotting out there, throwing a touchdown pass as a backup quarterback, kicking a field goal to win a ball game. So, anything can happen. I tell you, this may inspire the Colts to really boost up their level of protection when they know they got a rocking chair quarterback back there, not a guy mobile and average, and they may rise to the occasion and support Rivers if he gets on the field.
Have you ever seen an example of a quarterback taking 5 years off and then jumping back into a playoff race?
Well, no, but I've seen guys who've been sitting on the bench for 3 or 4 years and then making the comeback. So you never can discount it. The other thing about the Colts now, they do have a good running game. You got to like Jonathan Taylor, the running back. So as long as I can prop up the quarterback with a great running game, hey, that takes the burden off of him. I got more play action opportunities. So therefore, he's not going to have to drop back on 3rd and long all the time and be exposed to great pass rushers and things like that. So you can kind of minimize some of the advantages of a great defense if you can run the football.
Which teams in the NFC, I mean, we acknowledge the league's wide open. There's no team that the Niners necessarily can't beat. But which team in the NFC do you think would be the worst matchup for the Niners in the playoffs? Which team would they want to avoid if possible?
I go back to this. Go down to L.A., look at the Rams. Now, I know Stafford, they laid an egg a couple of weeks ago against Carolina. He throws a couple picks, I think one of which went for a pick 6. But I still think Sean McVay, when it gets down to, as we used to say, nut cutting time, he is the guy who's going to come up with the creative game plan. And Stafford has got some great wide receivers. He's got the Puka Nacua, who just is catching the ball like he's got Velcro all over his body. He's got Devontae Adams, who's a touchdown maker. He's inside the red zone. He's a legit 6. And then they're bringing back the Atwell guy, who's got only 4 or 5 catches, but he had a 68-yarder for a touchdown. So they've got some explosiveness, and they have a decent running game.
And they have all those tight ends.
They've got some good defensive rushers, and they're playing well with little Chris Shula, David's son, as the defensive coordinator.
Okay. And what about like Green Bay? I guess who's scared of Matt LaFleur in the playoffs, right?
Well, they've lost some offensive players. The tight end went down. The wide receiver's been hurt back on. Jacobs has been dinged and banged up. And so they do have a very good defense. Mm-hmm. Of course, they've got this guy wearing jersey number 1, who's not a bad ball player either. That helps. A guy named Micah Parsons. So you got to always consider them. But if I can get them in Levi Stadium in the playoffs rather than in Green Bay, I've got a weather advantage unless it's pouring rain in the Bay Area. But still, I like the matchup against Green Bay.
Let me ask you this. A month ago, the trade deadline came and went. The Niners didn't make a move, and sort of the implication is that they didn't really think this was the year. Let's say the trade deadline were tomorrow. Do you think the 49ers would still do nothing, or do you think, given the fact that they've won the last 3 games and what the rest of the league looks like, they'd be active?
Predicated upon the past 3 or 4 weeks, I think the Niners said, let's play with who we have.
Oh, interesting.
Well, who out there available now would be a dramatic difference maker for them as a edge player?
Yeah, those trades have already been made.
Correct. So why am I going to go shopping at, Salvation Army when I need a legitimate, 5-star quality player if that's the one guy I need to get me over the top from a defensive perspective?
All right. Well, so the Niners need some things to break their way for them to get to Levi's for the Super Bowl. But over the next month or two, what are some things that are within their control that they need to take care of to get there?
Number one is the kid playing quarterback needs to take care of the football.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's got to understand he needs to play within his skill set and what he can do at this time, not what he may think that he'd like to be able to do.
Or what he could do 2 years ago.
Yeah. Play within your own skill set and your own limitations. Don't try to be who you're not. Right. And just be the best you can be as who you are at this given point in time. And it gets back to what I always call the FIP situation: fumbles, interceptions, penalties, and sacks. Don't beat yourself first before you think about defeating the opponent. So rule number one is, hey, don't do anything stupid. Don't beat ourselves.
He did a great job of that in Cleveland.
Yeah. Minimize your mistakes.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Grant, you've got to realize, Saleh is kind of working with, he's playing a game that has 52 cards in it, but his deck on defense only has 48 or 49 cards. So he's got to try to find a way to manufacture some plays, some stops on third down, some good stops on first or second down to get defenses, the opposing offense, into a third and long situation. And he's playing a little bit short-handed right now on defense because he's missing some elite players. So the Niners on offense cannot do anything to put their own defense at a disadvantage with a short field position or give up a quick 6 on a turnover on a pick or a fumble.
I see.
Brock Purdy cannot have a Jalen Hurts ball game.
I want to come back to that because it's so funny. They had Mac Jones playing well, and they insisted on going back to Brock Purdy, who they say isn't 100% healthy. And the reason is because Mac Jones, as efficient as he was playing, wasn't getting them the big play that they wanted. So Brock Purdy comes back, and he tries to get the big play, and it results in interception after interception, and now he's reduced to trying to play like Mac Jones. That's the key for him the rest of the season. Play like Mac Jones when you have Mac Jones. Could work. That's interesting.
Well, I think it falls back upon Kyle. Kyle's play selection and play design needs to take into consideration and understand where they are in the season, where they are in the playoff race, and adapt his play calling not to expose Purdy to a quote-unquote an arena where he's not suited to execute, which is going to lead to the turnover. So Kyle needs to stay away from being Kyle and throwing those big chunk passes over the middle that result in numerous interceptions over the course of his career as a head coach. He's had more picks as a head coach calling plays, throwing those square in patterns at 15 to 17 yards than any other pass in his entire 9 years as a head coach of the Niners.
Yeah, it seems like every quarterback on the Niners eventually has an interception issue. Maybe it's a scheme issue. Maybe it's a play calling issue. Maybe it's a tendency and game planning, scouting issue for Kyle. I mean, he is the common denominator here.
He's got to know himself. The thing about it is, I remember years ago we had a quarterback who won 2 Super Bowls for us at the Raiders and was calling his own plays because that's what we did. We'd send in a play once in a while on a third down, or if it had motions or shifts or whatever. But we finally said, okay, we're taking this play away from you. You can call your own plays, but you can't call this play because it's resulting in turnovers.
Yep.
So you got to call something else. And on 2nd and 2 to 3, you're always calling this same run. You can't call that run anymore. So we put the kibosh on a pass and a run and said, okay, we got all these other plays in the game plan. Choose the one you like, but you can't call those 2. And hey, Kyle needs to do that to himself. This past week, Grant, with the bye week, he should have had his little analytics experts self-scout him as a play caller to discover the tendencies that he has, and then also look at what the defenses are doing. And now he should have been able to retool his game plan and his play calling and his scripting to be able to make an adjustment now as to what the defenses have as a book on him as a play caller and as a play designer.
It seems to me that since Purdy had that disastrous first half with the 3 straight drives with interceptions against Carolina, that Kyle sort of put the passing game in the garage and had safety first passing, training wheels passing the last 6 quarters. I mean, he hasn't really asked Brock Purdy to take any risks or put the ball in harm's way at all. It seems like that's probably a good way to approach the Tennessee Titans, maybe even the Colts, depending on what Phillip Rivers has left. But eventually, when they get in the playoffs, they're going to have to do more than that on offense. And I wonder if Kyle goes back to the square end over the middle or if he has other ways to create big plays with this personnel.
Well, the thing about it is, and we'll let it get to this later in the pass reps, to me, the greatest advantage the Niners have in the passing game is George Kittle.
Yep.
Okay. Now, his vertical concepts are a little bit different than the wide receiver concepts, but so far, there has not been any wide receiver who Kyle has been able to establish this year who is a viable, legitimate, deep threat. See, they have nobody on their offense outside the box which can take the top off, or who can take the top off of the defense.
It's supposed to be Ricky, but it's not Ricky.
No, I'm sorry. It's not. I hate to say it, but he kind of reminds me of this other number 1 draft pick as a wide receiver they took several years ago out of Illinois.
No.
Yeah. No.
He who must not be named.
We won't name him. We don't want to put the jinx on Ricky Pearsall, but I tell you what, I don't see it.
Yeah, he had a good couple of games, and then he broke down. Okay. So they need, we're going to get to that in the pass reps. It does come down to Brock Purdy taking care of the ball. He did it the last 6 quarters. Let's see if he can keep it going again. He doesn't have to take any risks against the Titans. I want to divert a little bit before we get back to this game. You mentioned Robert Saleh. It was reported today or yesterday that the Raiders tried to hire him as the defensive coordinator this past season, but the Niners outbid him. Now it seems like he's on their radar as a potential Pete Carroll replacement if they fire Pete Carroll. Do you think that's realistic? Do you think that'd be a good move for the Raiders? Do you think that'd be a good move for Robert Saleh?
The thing about, and I'm sure with his experience at the Jets, his learning curve has really been enhanced, and he learned a lot by being the head coach of a bad organization.
Yep.
Okay. And he's being paid well by the Niners. He's going to get offers, but now that it's not going to be his first head job again, he should not be so quick to bite. So the thing about it, they were going to bring him to Vegas as a head coach in waiting if he had come aboard as a defensive coordinator last year.
He'd be the heir apparent to Pete Carroll. They have a previous relationship and they have a similar philosophy.
Yeah. But I don't, it's going to be difficult for somebody to want to come into this organization in Henderson, Nevada, Vegas, because they are multiple players away from being even a 500 ball club, let alone a playoff contender.
Well, I was saying is like he could bring Mac Jones with him theoretically, and maybe Clay Kubiak, the offensive coordinator who doesn't call plays here, but still you don't have wide receivers, you don't have an offensive line, you don't have players.
Correct. The best thing I think when I look at what's awaiting whomever stays in the organization or who the new faces are when they come in, they're multiple players away. They're not a one-player fix away from being a playoff contender. And, as I told the guy the other day, that's why I would not draft the quarterback number 1 in the draft. A, because the grades of that quarterback or other quarterbacks who they might consider are below about 4 or 5 other players in the draft. And when you start the draft because of need rather than draft on talent, as the Niners learned, you make some mistakes. And those players are not the Pro Bowl quality player who should be taken that early in the draft.
Also, if you take a quarterback top 10, he might even be talented. But if your team is awful, he'll probably fail, go somewhere else and be good if he is good. I mean, we've seen that so many times the last 5 years.
Yeah, you trot around the league and you look at all the recycled quarterbacks who went early, the Baker Mayfields, the Sam Darnolds, and those guys. Look at the kid in Indianapolis who just lost the regular season because of the Achilles, and had the broken fibula, was Daniel Jones. Mac Jones is another example. There's 4 guys right there who've been recycled, some of whom have been on 3 or 4 ball clubs, and they finally got to a place where they have a fit with them, an offensive scheme that's working with them, and they're surrounded by some players with some maturity, some experience, so that they don't have to be the sole flag bearer for the franchise.
So you think there's a real chance that Robert Saleh is patient, doesn't necessarily jump at the Raiders or the first team that offers him a job, and maybe stays with the 49ers another year?
My advice to him, I mean, having been in the game over 5 decades, is wait.
Yeah.
You've been a head coach already, so you've already crossed that threshold. Right. The next time, make an intelligent decision predicated upon what's out there for you rather than jumping at the first offer, which normally is going to be a bad offer, because the bad teams are the ones who are going to be looking for head coaches. So, it's like Ben Johnson, who was in Detroit as the offensive coordinator. Brady went to hire him initially here in Henderson and with the Raiders, okay? He turned him down, and he decided that ain't the place I want to be for my first go-round. Well, look at what he's done in Chicago. Even though they lost the ball game the other day to Green Bay, they're still in the hunt. They're like one of the wild card teams, that they're right on the threshold of being a wild card team and qualifying for the playoffs in his first year as a head coach. So, yeah, sometimes you have to bite the bullet and bide your time and patience rather than diving off the board and not knowing how deep the water is.
Yeah, because if he fails with the Raiders, which everyone does, he's not. I mean, how many coaches get a third chance when they fail twice?
Well, I think the Raiders, since we were there in the 80s and early 90s, have had 18 different head coaches. They've had, 5 or 6 in the last 6 or 7 years.
I mean, and so, maybe the issue is bigger than the coach. Maybe it's the owner and the minority owner and the announcer who's making decisions for them.
Especially when he's doing it long distance. One of the things is, how can you be an owner of a minority share, but you've been given 100% of the voice of football operations? You brought in your own general manager, who was your teammate at Michigan when you were playing quarterback and he was playing linebacker. You're into all this analytics, but yet you're never around, but you're making decisions via long distance. Even the players say, hey, Tom, if you want to run the organization, get your behind in the office and work.
So if Saleh were to take the job with the Raiders, whoever takes the job with the Raiders is going to have to deal with Tom Brady meddling constantly from God knows where, with whatever expertise he has.
Well, it's going to be Brady's choice.
Right. Oh,
because he owns the GM. That Spytek is his guy.
And Mark Davis has just thrown up his hand and say, Tom, help me.
Yeah. Mark says, hey, I don't know if the ball's pumped with air or stuff with rags. You help us make the decisions to re-engineer, get this ship flowing in the proper direction. And right now it's still a rudderless ship.
Yeah. Saleh probably shouldn't take that job. You think there's a possibility that Mike Tomlin leaves Pittsburgh and that's open? Because, I mean, who wouldn't want that job? You get 20 years of job security.
Yeah, but, they've been talking about Tomlin being gone for a decade,
That's true.
And the guy,
they're not going to fire him. They're like hoping he leaves. Like, hey, why don't you check out another team?
He's never had a losing record. How can teams fire guys who are going 9-8, 9-7, and here he's got his whole career. He's never been under 500, been to the playoffs 8 or 9 times. So granted, they haven't, won big lately, haven't advanced beyond a round or two, but he's always knocking on the door.
It's true. It's true. Bill Kennedy says, if Rivers can play, Tom can coach the Raiders. Are you going to throw your hat in the ring? Come on, Tom. They need you.
Oh, throw my hat. Yeah, I'll tell you what. It just, I have ideas. Let me say this. I was very fortunate as a very young guy, 24, 25 years old. Sid Gilman basically adopted me as he was my football father. Then fortunately, Al comes in And Al was groomed by Sid with the LA Chargers back in the 1960s, 61, 62, 63. Then he went to Oakland. And so I've been very fortunate to be around two very astute, knowledgeable football people: offense, defense, special teams, and personnel. And then I was fortunate for a number of years to work under Tom Flores, and who had been a Raider, the original quarterback of the Raiders back in 1960, and who was very calm and wrote a book like about being the Iceman. I mean, never showed any. Very seldom would he ever demonstrate, any emotion beyond total control. So I learned a lot in that regard. And then we had Ron Wolf, who was the premier personnel man. And the ironic thing, Grant, to detract from that for a quick second, people are looking at New England, looking at the job that Vrabel's doing. Well, you know what? They got this personnel guy, this GM in New England, whose last name also is Wolf, the same name as the father whose bust is in Canton from 23 years as being one of the premier personnel directors, general managers in the National Football League. So the apple did not fall very far from the Wolf tree to Elliott, his son, who I knew when he was like knee high to a fire hydrant. But and so
I remember 9 years ago when the Niners were hiring Kyle Shanahan and they were trying to figure out which GM to get, you were recommending him. And the Niners ended up getting John Lynch because that's who Kyle Shanahan wanted, and they've done well. But he's not exactly a personnel guy like Elliott Wolf or Brian Gutekunst up in Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, Elliott's done a great job. You look at their personnel. The thing is, you go back and look at New England, and not to detract from Bill Belichick's greatness as a head coach in Super Bowls, but we talked about this previously. You go back 6 or 7 years of Bill's last 6 or 7 years, none of his first 3 rounds of draft picks ever got a second contract with the Patriots. I didn't know that yet.
That's right.
But that talks about his, I won't say lack of draft acuity or acumen, but to have your first 3 round picks for like 5 or 6 consecutive years, none of whom is awarded a second contract by the team which drafted you, that speaks ill will of your draftability. And now they've kind of reversed engines a little bit with Elliott at the helm, and now they're back at the top of the Eastern Division.
I mean, aren't the Niners kind of similar to that? Who was the last top 3 draft pick that they gave an extension to? Ayuk. That didn't work out. I mean, it's been a long time. I'm looking at Trey Sermon, Aaron Banks, Trey Lance, Danny Gray, Jair Brown, Jake Moody. Man, the Niners, I gotta say, man, Kyle Shanahan aspired to be the offensive Bill Belichick, and he kind of is the Bill Belichick. Like, there aren't many coaches with the amount of power that Kyle Shanahan has. Belichick was one, but it didn't go well for him. And with the Niners, it seems like drafting a little bit of an issue. I don't know.
Let me say this. Sid told me one time, I was like 24, 25 years old at the time, and we were discussing his career as a head coach and a GM with the Chargers way back. The LA Chargers, the LA Rams in the 50s when they won the championship way back when, and then with the LA Chargers when they went to the AFL before they became the San Diego Chargers, then now they're back in LA. He said the biggest mistake that he ever made was that he would watch 16 millimeter film, 10 or 11 clips of a player for the draft and say, okay, that's my guy, as opposed to listening to his scouts who spent all year traveling the country watching thousands of feet of film. And Sid said 1 year they had 11 draft picks. Not one of those 11 draft picks made the club. And he said he learned a lesson then: keep my nose out of it and let the experts who I hire and who I am paying to be the draft gurus and the talent evaluators, let them do their jobs. And see, Kyle has made mistakes over the years. He gets a favorite son, somebody to whom he becomes enamored in the draft and looking at 5 minutes of tape or a 10-minute interview at Indianapolis.
Ricky Pearsall, Dante Pettis.
It's a house of cards.
Yeah, over and over and over again. And I think, is Mike Vrabel a better coach than Bill Belichick? Maybe. Or maybe he plays his position he is the head coach. He allows Elliott Wolf to do his job as opposed to Bill Belichick, who was a little emperor. And I mean, Mike Shanahan was kind of like that too, right? I mean, this was a long time ago, but didn't people always say that Mike Shanahan, the general manager, got Mike Shanahan, the head coach, fired? I heard that a million times. Kyle seems to be flirting down the same path.
Yeah, that happens with a lot of organizations. Holmgren got into the same problem up in Seattle.
That's right.
And then at Cleveland.
Yeah, because they're so grateful to have you. They promote you, give you all the power, all the money, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe he was better just being the head coach.
Well, another thing head coaches make mistakes that causes them their downfall. And Coach Jack Curtis, who had been at Stanford and Utah with Lee Groscup before that, then was at Santa Barbara when I was a student athlete there. And when I was leaving the door, he goes, point taken. And I'm 22 years old. He says, never, when you're a head coach, never hire your friends to coach for you. If they can't coach, because he said, you're not going to be able to fire them because they're your friends, but they're going to get you fired as the head coach because they can't coach.
Yeah.
And see, that's another pitfall.
Nick Sorensen last year, that was a classic example of that one. Nick Sorensen last year, friend.
Yeah. You can't, as much as you have them as friends, Mike White was Bill Walsh's best friend and his beard for a lot of years in the Bay Area. Hell, he got him the head job in Illinois.
Yep.
Rather than stay on the staff at San Francisco. So,
okay, let's go back to the game this weekend. The Titans, they're 2-11, but they won last week. Their running back was great, and their quarterback was the number one pick in the draft. Based on what you've seen from Tennessee, what are the keys for the Niners defense for Robert Saleh in this matchup?
I tell you, I looked at that Tennessee roster and I've watched them play and all that. I tell you what, they are the best example of a teammate, a roster full of people who belong in a witness protection program, and no one in the league knows who they are.
Yeah, never heard these guys, man.
You never heard of these guys. It's like the unknowns. Now, that is the biggest pitfall for the Niners going in defensively to look at their offense and go, well, this they're dead last in the NFL in total offense. They're averaging 246 yards a game.
How?
They're scoring 14 points a game. They've only won 2. So, don't fall into the trap of thinking, you know what, we can just throw our helmets out on the field and we'll win the game regardless. That's the biggest mistake. So Saleh's got to be able to say, you cannot take these guys lightly. We are in the hunt for the playoffs. We're in the hunt for being in Levi Stadium in February. You got to go in there and you got to take these guys to be legit. You got to take them in to be capable and competent. We got to go in there and bring our best game forward. We got to be able to deliver some haymakers. This kid's been sacked 49 times. Which is leads the league. He's only throwing 9 touchdowns and he's got 7 picks. So, they do have a legitimate running back. Pollard's has gained some yards. The guys he's legit. He's decent. They got a couple offensive linemen who are not bad.
I like how you pointed out that Cam Ward has 9 touchdowns and 7 picks. Like, that's awful. You know who else has 9 touchdowns and 7 picks this season?
Your $255 million quarterback.
Yeah, man, it's what a matchup it's going to be. Jeez.
Well, Purdy's got to get out of that game without another pick. He's got to get out of the game with a clean uniform and no fips on his behalf. No fumbles, no sacks, no interceptions. No stupid plays. Just play a smart game. Play a clean game. Play an intelligent game. You don't need to go out there and, try to make it long ball, shots left and right. Just be smart.
Right. And so on defense, it seems like if Cam Ward is leading the league in sacks, the Niners, even without Nick Bosa, should be able to generate some pressure if we're going to take this defense seriously in the playoffs. Like, this is a game where you should be able to bother Cam Ward. He shouldn't be comfortable all game the way Jacoby Brissett was a month ago.
No, the thing about it is The one thing that worries me is that when they see 49 sacks, now you got everybody on the defensive line salivating and thinking about sacks, which is a mistake. See, the thing about it, this kid still does have some ability. He's not a statue back there. He's not like an iron deer on your lawn, as you know. And so, therefore, I got to make sure I have somebody always holding back, playing screen and draw, so that all four of my pass rushers are not on the same level, because then that opens up the Red Sea. So will they open up the 5-hole or the 4-hole because the end's blowing up the field? Then defensive tackle in the 3 tech decides to take the A gap. There's nobody in the C gap, and all of a sudden Ward's standing back there, and the thing opens up like the Grand Canyon. The Red Sea is parting. He's going to take off and run, even though he's not a great scrambler. So I've got to make sure that I don't let them fall into some big plays due to my lack of discipline from a defensive perspective. Don't get carried away thinking about sack, sack, sack.
It's the second game in a row against a rookie quarterback. The last one was Shedeur Sanders. It was windy. He didn't throw any picks. He was modest at best. They scored 8 points. Do you think Cam Ward's better than him? I mean, they just played each other last week. Is this a similar test for the 49ers? Is he green? What do you see from Cam?
Not
a lot to work with.
I feel badly for rookie quarterbacks being tossed out there on the field.
Yeah.
They're young, obviously. They don't have a lot of experience. They don't have a lot of reps. They're learning on the hoof and baptism by fire, and allow them to be who they are: young, inexperienced, prone to mistake. So don't give them a cheap 6. Don't walk up on some Joe Schmo at wide receiver, play bump and run. Everybody else is playing soft, and you give Cam Ward an easy throw over the top, and he hits one.
Because he has the arm talent to do that.
Yeah, he does. The kid does have talent. He's won a lot of ball games in his college career. He's had a lot of success throwing the ball, but don't give him an opportunity to bite you in the butt by giving him a cheap play.
I see. So, don't give him opportunities where it's one read, use your athletic gifts, big throw, big arm, get out of the pocket. Let him stay in the pocket, go through his progressions, play NFL quarterback the way Mac and Brock do, the way veterans do, and see how effective he can do that over 4 quarters. That's probably the best way to go about this.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Make him make decisions rather than making a decision for him.
I like that. That makes sense. Okay, let's flip it around. The Niners offense against the Titans defense. What's the key here?
The one thing about it, first of all, penalties would be a concern for me. And then Purdy playing out of character. Mm-hmm. These guys are giving up. They're like 26th in the NFL in defense. They're 31st or 32nd on offense. Okay, don't help them be better than they are. They're giving up over 350 yards a game, which ranks them like 26th or 27th. And part of that goes to Kyle. Don't get greedy. Don't try to manufacture a big play. Allow things to come to you. And there's a reason why they're 26th in team defense. There's a reason why they're 32nd in team offense. Don't give them any freebies. And so stay with your run game. I would like to see them, be a little bit more between the tackles. I would like to see them use some insert blocking schemes. My goodness, they could, the other week they ran a insert scheme with your buddy Juszczyk going through the line, and he ran a corner route or a sail route out of the backfield, and they threw the ball to him. Well, hey, do that and block somebody, so the run game can be more beneficial.
I like that. It seems to me that the Niners are getting in trouble this year whenever they try to force the ball to Jennings and Bourne. I mean, not Bourne, Jennings and Pearsall. Like they've thrown 13 picks as a team this season. 10 of them have gone. I've been on passes intended for Jennings and Pearsall. So as long as they don't force it to those guys, and when they take their shots, it's to Kittle, they should be okay. I mean, no one's thrown a pick while targeting Kittle this year. Usually if you throw it to Kittle, he comes down with it, or no one does.
Well, the thing about Kittle and also McCaffrey, both of those guys are very good with run after the catch.
Yep.
Your other guys are not very good with run after the catch.
Nope.
In fact, Jennings struggles to get open. If I were playing man coverage bump and run against Jennings, unless he bulls me and bullies me, he's not going to run away from me.
No.
You know, the guy's carrying a safe on his back when he's trying to get open.
Run a 6-yard in or a 6-yard out. That's all it's going to be.
His repertoire, his resume as a wide receiver, as he's aged, is very limited. Sure, he's a tough guy. He's a physical guy. He tries to be, macho man out there, run blocking and all that. But he has limitations as a wide receiver. So I have a book on Jennings on how he needs to be defended, about what routes he wants to run, etc. And then Bourne, by the same token, he's going to run corner routes. He'll run a skinny post or a slant once in a while, and then he'll run a couple square ins. The Niners wide receivers have a very limited pass tree from which they operate. And that part of that goes back to Kyle, and part of that goes back to how those receivers have been developed in terms of running the routes and developing their stems and their feelings on the route tree. So my best bets, get the ball to Kittle, get the ball to McCaffrey in the passing game. And then, my other weapon that I would have out there is this kid Tongas, the kid from Cal, the tight end. The guy's got hands like Velcro. I mean, it's like flypaper. So you put the ball anywhere in his catch radius, he's bringing it in. I would utilize him more, and he does have some run after the catch ability as well. So I need to, let those guys flourish.
What's funny to me is you could argue that the Niners' best receivers, like their best matchups on the field, are Kittle, Tonjas, Farrell, McCaffrey, Juszczyk. Like all the non-wide receivers are the guys they should be throwing the ball to the most. And yet Kyle's still fixated on making it work with Jennings and Pearsall week in and week out.
Well, I would throw a couple token passes, a couple delays, a couple of hides and all that kind of junk. But yeah, if my best matchups are linebackers and strong safeties against those other players who you mentioned, that's my matchup. At this time in the season, it's about players, not plays. Yep. So who are my players? I'm going to be able to make the cash register ring by going to those guys. And those are the players who you mentioned. And, as an offense, I'm going to have to be more methodical because I don't have the big play shots at wide receiver. I can't go over the top. As we used to say, the quickest way to the end zone is one-on-one with a wide receiver against a corner. Well, as a Niner, I don't have that matchup. So I'm going to have to matriculate the ball a little bit more with my play calling and work it down the field with the run game, the play action passing game, throwing some stick routes, some pressure routes, some choice routes.
That's how the Rams play too. I mean, they'll throw it over the top to Devontae Adams in the red zone, but like they're a pretty methodical offense that uses lots of tight ends and running backs. I mean, they do have good wide receivers, but they figured out when those guys were hurt that they could play a totally different way.
Sean McVay is better. This is why I like the Rams better than the Niners to win the Super Bowl. He is much better at the utilization and the implementation of plays to feature his talent. And he puts his mindset on the shelf in terms of what his ideal is. It's like this. You've got to coach the players who you have, not the ones who you wish you had. And from my perspective, after 53 years in the game, Kyle has yet to make that adjustment where McVay has become a master about how to utilize his players to their utmost advantage. And that's the difference in the ball game right there.
Well, let's help Kyle. This is what the essence of the show is about. This is the Playbook breakdown segment powered by Pass Reps, where we make you smarter about football every week. You can get Pass Reps yourself and actually practice calling plays before Sunday for only $1.99 a month. Just go to passreps.com or click the link in the description. It's on the screen. All right, Tom, let's take a look at this play. I think we're going to try to get the ball to George Kittle. What do you think?
See, whether this is off a drop back scheme or I even like it more off of a play action package as well, is to run Kittle on what we call a six spear route rather than the six square in, true, what they call a dig route. we'll run it a spear, push him up the field 10 to 12 yards, and angle him across the field, gaining ground to 22 to 28 yards, where he can be above the top of the linebackers and layer it in between. So I'll take Pearsall out as a wide receiver at the split ends, run him on the post route so I can drive off the free safety. I'm going to take the top off of the defense with the corner and the free safety by running Pearsall to the post. Then I bring George across the formation. Even off of play action, it's better because I'm sucking up the linebackers. And now he's going to go against, if it's man, he's going against Amani Hooker. But if it's zone, I got to get him over the top of the linebackers like Barton and Gray to be able to drop the ball into him right there inside the numbers. That's where the sweet spot is. And, 18 to 22 yards, maybe 22 to 25 at the most. And that's that intermediate level to where he will be above the backers and below the secondary. And play action works wonders with that. You can run that same thing off of an insert release by Kittle. If I wanted to bring him across in motion, instead of shifting him over to the tight end spot and lining him up, bring him in motion and then insert him, between the guard tackle area and have him run the route that way. You're talking about losing it off a play action pass. You're losing your coverage because they have lost Kittle with the motion. Then you got the play action coming at him. If I do it out of 11 personnel, I can take McCaffrey like you see it here, put him up on the wing on the weak side. If I have to chip an edge rusher, run him on the shallow cross where he's underneath the square on the backside, but I'm still going to run Kittle across the formation. And so, I've got, it's a wide open shot. And if I
whether it's man or zone, you're going to Kittle. That's the first read.
Correct. And I want to put the ball up in the air before Kittle gets to the numbers, and I can lead him from the inside edge of the numbers all the way to the sideline, which is 14 yards horizontally. So I've got enough grass to which I can throw the ball. The direction of my pass is taking it towards the boundary. So I have the safety. If I overthrow it, it goes out of bounds. I'm not going to leave it hanging in the middle of the field like on the square end patterns and have it get picked. So that's another advantage to running that kind of a diagonal deep opposite route, like on what we call a spear.
Yeah, he's open. He's been open since he made his break. I like that. Okay, let's look at it one more time against split safeties. I mean, Kyle should have 100 ways to get the ball to George Kittle down the field.
Oh, there's no question. And see, that if they play too high like you just showed right there, Pearsall's got to take that near half safety and get rid of him and take him off and clean him out. And so the corner will squat in the flat, but then you're talking about a 22 to 25-yard pass. The corner's not going to sink that deep. And then if Kittle's not open because the backer sinks underneath it, I'll have your buddy Jennings running the square in behind it, and I've driven off the deep half safeties, so I should be able to find daylight to be able to throw the ball to Jennings as a last resort before I check the ball down to the remaining back or underneath to McCaffrey going across the formation where he could throttle versus zone.
I see. Okay. Well, look, you just saw the breakdown. Now go test your own football IQ. Pass reps updates weekly. $199 a month. The link's below. Don't just watch the game. Call it. Passreps.com. All right, it's time to make a prediction. Then we're going to make some prize picks. You're thinking the Niners are going to beat the Tennessee Titans. How much? How close is this game going to be?
From a coach's perspective, I like to be able to pull my starters, knowing that my aspirations are to get to the playoffs and all that. I don't want to have to rely upon trying to win the ball game in the last 2 minutes of the game, using my horses to try to win the run for the roses. I want to be able to go to my bench. So my idea is I want to be up by at least 3 scores by the end of the third quarter, even in the first series of the fourth quarter. If I'm up by 21 at that point, 24 at that point, then I could be able to say, okay, let's take out the starters. Let's get some backups in. Let's save legs. We got the Colts coming up. We got, the Bears coming up. We got Seattle coming up. I've got to keep my starters, my premier players healthy. So I want to be ahead and dominate enough to the point where I can begin to pull guys in the fourth quarter to save their legs, prevent injuries, that kind of thing. So I want to say they should win this game. I would say at least 35-10.
Makes sense. I mean, it would be a great week to not overuse Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, classic. The other thing about it is, I think the Niners, with their last 3 or 4 wins, have been by at least 16 points or more. So, they should be able to.
They beat Carolina by 11, but they beat the Browns by 18. 18. Yeah. So another double digit win, I would think. Yeah, I would think so.
I want to. If I'm ahead, I want to win by 3 scores, and I don't mean 16-9. I'm talking about I don't mean by field goals. I mean by touchdowns. I want to have 3 7-pointers difference between the Titans and me on the board when I look up there at the board.
Yeah, and it seems like the only way the Niners wouldn't win by 3 scores is if their quarterback turns the ball over, which is the key of the season. Not doing that anymore. It's been 6 quarters. Let's see if we can keep it going. Let's go prize picks. Let's check out Brock Purdy. Is there an interception? Yes, there is. Will he throw an interception in this game? 0.5 is the number, more or fewer?
I'll say fewer.
I love that you're being positive and giving him the benefit of the doubt. 2 games in a row without an interception.
He needs to play a clean game. Come on.
Yeah, and it's not like he needs to take risks against the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward, 189.5 passing yards. He went for 117 last week. More or fewer?
I'll say fewer.
Whew. Yeah, 10 points. It's going to be rough. Christian McCaffrey, 71.5 rushing yards. More or fewer?
I'll say more.
Okay. Tony Pollard, 40.5.
Oh, definitely more.
Definitely more. Okay. Receiving. Kittle. This one's been going up all week. 61.5 receiving yards. More or fewer?
Oh, if I were calling the plays, I'd say more. I can't speak for Kyle. All I can hope is maybe if his wife watches your show like she always does, maybe she can slip him a couple coaching points while he's having coffee with her sometime during the week to say, hey, hon, get the ball to Kittle more.
Yeah. Tom Walsh gave us a great play. It's the spear route. Have you heard of this? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're watching and they're going to take some good advice.
I'll say more. Yeah.
Okay. Last one. Ricky Pearsall, 31.5. 31.5.
I'll say fewer.
Oh. Okay.
Ricky's going to fade.
Yeah. Seems like he's been doing the slow fade or the quick fade. Those are our picks. We're going to flex it just in case. Submit it. Download Prize Picks yourself. Use promo code COHN, COHN. You play $5, you get $50 instantly in lineups when you use that promo code. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the Niners win by 25.
Well, so the thing about it, I was worrying this week, other than viewing audience in the Bay Area and the viewing audience down in the Nashville, Tennessee area, who else in the country is watching this game?
I don't think anyone's going to be watching. I think if you look at the map, it's like California, Nashville, and then no one else wants to see this.
Unfortunately, but besides the viewing audience, the Niners need to make a statement here. And when you're supposed to beat somebody, you need to beat them. You need to beat them down. You need to, as Art Joe used to say, you got to step on their neck when you have the chance.
Is this an audition for Robert Saleh to take the Titans job? Do you think they'd want him, or do you think they want an offensive coach?
Oh, they got to go with an offensive coach. They got a young quarterback who needs grooming. The thing about Saleh that considers me the most, to be honest, who is he going to find as an offensive coordinator who has the creativity and to be able to develop a 22 or 23-year-old quarterback, and knowing that that's going to be a process and a job. That's a career coaching job in itself. Not some guy who's out there, it's 60 years old, who's, going to just drop it.
The fact that Klint Kubiak is doing so well in Seattle might make Clay Kubiak sort of a name to watch. I don't know if he's as good as his older brother, but maybe Saleh could bring Clay Kubiak with him, although he's never called a play and he's never developed a quarterback. So I don't know.
Well, Saleh, if he went to Tennessee, he'd still have a lot of work to do with that defense as well, because they're not lighting up,
No, they got Jeffrey Simmons, and that's about it. Okay. All right. Well, time for me to go check out what's going on with the Niners. Tom, thank you very much. See if you can help the Raiders from completely making fooling themselves this week.
It might take a few gallons of holy water to get that done,
Whew. Thanks for watching, everyone. We got one more real quick. Lyle Bolyard says, if the Niners lose Robert Saleh next, I think they should go after Jim Schwartz. What do you guys think?
I tell you, Jim Schwartz is a great defensive coordinator. He wasn't so successful as a head coach, but some of these guys have a niche and they have a skill and a special set, either offensively or defensively, but they don't have the personality or the wherewithal to be able to be a head coach. Schwartz is a very, very good defensive coordinator.
It'd be great if they could get him. Thanks for watching, everyone. Tom, same time, same place next week.
Enjoy Tennessee. Well, no,
all right. I'm here. I'll be enjoying Indianapolis on Christmas.